The afternoon sky had dimmed into that peculiar gray between light and darkness, as though the heavens themselves were painted in strokes of tired pewter. Thin clouds moved like worn cloth across the pale sun, muting its warmth, muting the city. The chill of autumn crept into the stone sidewalks, into the iron railings, into the bicycle frame that rattled softly as she guided it with care. She was slight, almost fragile in appearance, moving with the deliberate quiet of someone who never wanted to take up too much space in the world. Her shoulders bent inward, her gaze often low, and her steps always measured as if she feared they might echo too loudly in the silence around her. At the edge of the parking lot, near a small row of chestnut trees shedding their leaves, she slowed her pace. It was a quiet corner of the city at that hour, the kind of place where even the birds seemed to whisper rather than sing. A black car stood there, sleek and polished, its surface gleaming like obsidian pulled from the earth. It belonged in a different world than hers. The car exhaled the aura of wealth, of someone who lived with confidence, who didn't worry about the small cuts and scratches of everyday survival. She only wanted to pass by. She leaned her bike closer to her side, narrowed her shoulders, and took a careful step forward, but life rarely respects the precision of caution. A sound came soft, so faint it might have gone unnoticed by anyone else, but to her, it cracked through the air like a gavel pronouncing guilt. The bicycle pedal had brushed the paint. She froze. Time hung. On the car's dark surface, a pale mark no thicker than a fingernail glared back at her. To another, it was nothing. To her, it was everything. Her hand flew to her mouth. She looked around. The lot was empty. No eyes, no witnesses. She could walk away, and the world would never know. The scratch was small enough to be dismissed by someone less sensitive, someone with the confidence to shrug off such accidents. But she wasn't that someone. Her life had taught her that mistakes always had a cost. Her breath came uneven. She set her bicycle against the curb, knelt down, touched the faint scratch as though she might rub it away. Of course it stayed. She bit her lip until it hurt. Then, with trembling hands, she pulled her backpack around and searched inside. Not her phone. She didn't want to type words coldly into a screen. She pulled out a single sheet of paper, crumpled from being carried too long, and a pen. The pen wavered in her fingers. She started writing, but the letters came crooked. Her apology to Messi. She tore the sheet, folded it small, shoved it back, and began again. She rewrote her apology 3 times. The final note was in a round, careful script, dotted with smudges where sweat had slipped from her fingertips. I accidentally scratched your car. I'm very sorry. I don't have much, but I will take responsibility. Even if you're angry, I hope you can forgive me. This is my phone number. She read it twice, then folded it neatly. Rising, she approached the windshield of the black car. Her knees weak, her breath uneven, and tucked the note beneath the wiper. For a moment she lingered, her hair blowing into her face as a light breeze cut through the lot. Her head bowed, eyes half hidden behind strands of brown. She looked at the car the way one might look at a person they had harmed, as though her gaze itself might carry the apology her words could not. Then, without another pause, she wheeled her bicycle away. The day passed like a blur. In her lecture hall, slides flickered across the screen with numbers and formulas she had once studied carefully. But her mind could not grasp them. They moved like a language foreign to her, indecipherable, meaningless. Her thoughts returned again and again, to the black car, to the scratch, to the note tucked under the wiper. Every tick of the clock on the classroom wall tightened her chest. She feared the sound of her phone. She feared silence even more. Her phone never rang. That night, she tried to study. She tried to eat. She tried to sleep. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the car's gleam, the faint scar across its surface, and the image of a man's voice shouting, demanding money she could not pay. She lived simply, frugally. Her parents lived far away, just surviving themselves. She studied part-time, worked weekends in a cafe, stretched every coin she earned into rent, groceries, and tuition. She owned little. But everything she owned she guarded carefully because she knew how fragile stability could be. By morning, the silence had become unbearable. She half expected a call when she unlocked her phone, a message filled with anger. But there was nothing. She carried her books, pulled her scarf tight against the wind, and rode her bike to her part-time shift at the bookstore. Her chest tightened when she saw the same black car parked in the same spot near the park. She wanted to turn away, but her route led past it. Her eyes flicked quickly across its surface, searching for the scar. She could not tell if it was still there. She did not look long enough to know. She gripped her handlebars tighter and pedaled past quickly, heart stuttering. That evening, the city softened under night. A crescent moon hung behind thin clouds, pale and delicate, as if suspended by invisible threads. She finished her shift late, her body tired from the hours of quiet labor. She stepped into the lot where she had left her bicycle. The night air was cool, sharp enough to bite at her skin. She reached for her keys, eyes lowered. That was when she saw him. A figure leaned against the black car. He was not young, perhaps in his 40s. A black shirt beneath a long coat, his frame tall, composed but not rigid. In one hand he held an old leather notebook, the cover worn, edges frayed, as if it had traveled through years of use. His face was partly shadowed, partly illuminated by the pale streetlight overhead. The creases around his eyes marked him as someone who had lived long with both disappointment and memory. For a moment, he did not look at her. His gaze was lowered, fixed on something inside his mind. But as she stepped closer, his eyes lifted. They found her. "You're the one who left the note yesterday." It was not an accusation, only a statement. Her heart beat like a drum in her chest. Her lips parted, trembling. "Yes, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I can pay to fix it if I didn't call," he interrupted gently. His voice was low, I wanted to meet you in person." Her throat tightened. She bit her lip, her eyes dropping again. Her hands gripped the straps of her backpack until her knuckles whitened. "I don't really have much money, but I'll find a way. You think I came here to ask you for money?" His question halted her thoughts. There was a soft laugh beneath his words, not mocking, but touched with something almost tender. For the first time, she looked directly at him. The streetlight caught the line of his nose, the angles of his cheekbones, the creases carved by time near his eyes. He didn't look like someone who belonged to the black car behind him. He didn't look like someone rich and furious. He looked instead like someone who had once carried weight and now bore the remnants of it in silence. "Not everyone has the courage to admit a mistake," he said. Especially when no one's watching, the words hung between them. She wanted to believe him, but she was too used to blame, to suspicion, to fear. Silence folded around her again. "You know," he added, his voice quieter now, as though speaking half to himself. "Sometimes a scratch is the place where the first light finds its way in." She didn't understand fully, but she felt something in his words. They reached not only her ears, but something softer within her, something that had lived for too long in shadows. They parted without another word. He didn't ask for her number. He didn't mention the money again. She rode away into the night, lighter but not untroubled. Yet his words lingered. Sometimes a scratch is the place where the light finds its way in. That night, her sleep was a fragile thing, like paper caught in a restless wind. Each time her eyelids closed, she drifted only to wake again, the man's words echoing faintly in the dark. Sometimes a scratch is the place where the light finds its way in. The phrase replayed again and again, weaving itself into her thoughts until it no longer felt like something he had said, but like something her own mind whispered to her. By morning, the city had reshaped itself in the pale wash of dawn. The streets were wet with the remnants of rain, glistening under the first hesitant beams of light. She biked slowly through the damp air, her scarf pulled close to her chin, her hair pinned back against the breeze. The black car was no longer in the lot, but the memory of it followed her. She thought of the man leaning against it, his stillness, the old notebook he held as though it carried some part of his life. She wondered what words he had written in it. She wondered why he had come at all when he could have ignored her note. At the bookstore, the day passed, in a quiet rhythm, stacking spines, arranging shelves. Answering polite questions from customers whose voices rarely lifted beyond a murmur. The smell of old paper, dust, and fresh ink clung to the air. Normally, she found comfort in it, the soft companionship of books, the silence that did not demand anything of her. But today, even the silence felt restless. She found herself glancing at the door each time it opened, as though expecting him to appear. He never did. When her shift ended, she stepped into the late afternoon air, her hands tucked deep in her pockets. She turned toward the small cafe at the corner, a place she sometimes visited when she needed warmth. Inside, the light was soft and amber, steam rising gently from cups set on polished wooden tables. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, a fragile sweetness layered over bitterness. She ordered tea, sat by the window, and watched the passers-by. And then, as though conjured by thought, she saw him. He crossed the street slowly, his coat moving like a shadow in the wind. He carried the same notebook, one hand tucked casually into his pocket, the other gripping the worn leather cover. When he entered the cafe, his presence shifted the air, not loudly, not dramatically, but as though the room itself recognized him. His gaze passed briefly over the counter, the barista, the few tables filled with strangers, and then settled on her. He approached without hurry, as though he had already known she would be there. "Do you mind if I sit?" His voice was calm, the same low steadiness as before. She nodded, words catching in her throat. He sat opposite her, setting the notebook gently on the table. For a moment, they said nothing. The world outside the window moved, cars, bicycles, people in coats, but inside, the silence stretched. Finally, he spoke. "You left a note when you didn't have to. That tells me something about you." She lowered her gaze, her fingers tightening around the warm ceramic of her cup. It just felt wrong to walk away. "Most people would have," he replied simply. He studied her for a moment, not with intrusion, but with the kind of attention that made her uneasy. "What's your name?" Her lips parted, hesitant. "Lena," he nodded once. "Lena." He said it as though testing the weight of it, the shape of it. "I'm Eric." The name settled between them like a marker, something grounding. She nodded faintly, not knowing what else to say. Arik leaned back slightly, the chair creaking under his weight. "Do you always carry that kind of honesty with you? Or was yesterday an exception?" She blinked at him, unsure how to answer. Her instinct was to retreat, to hide behind silence, but his gaze held her steady. "Finally," she whispered, "I just don't want to hurt anyone. Not if I can help it." Something in his expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. Not quite a smile, but softer, as though he recognized a thought he had once carried himself. He tapped his fingers lightly against the notebook. "You remind me," he said slowly, "of someone I used to know." He didn't explain, and she didn't ask. The air between them grew thicker, filled with things unsaid. She wondered what stories were written in that leather book of his. What memories lived behind the creases of his face? Their tea and coffee grew cold, but neither noticed. When they parted, it was without exchange of numbers, without arrangement for another meeting. Yet Lena felt something shifting, as though the world had quietly tilted on its axis. She rode her bicycle home beneath the dimming sky, the air sharp with the smell of rain. Her chest carried a strange weight knot, fear, not relief, but something she could not yet name. The days that followed unfolded in fragments. She would glimpse the black car at odd hours, sometimes near the park, sometimes along unfamiliar streets. Sometimes she saw him with it, sometimes not. And sometimes, without warning, he appeared in the bookstore, not speaking to her, only scanning the shelves with his notebook in hand, as though looking for something the world had misplaced. Each time, she felt a quiet tension coil within her, not of danger, but of curiosity, the ache of a question without an answer. It was one evening, when the city's lamps had just begun to glow, that he approached her again. She was closing the bookstore, key turning in the lock, when his voice came from behind. "Do you believe in coincidence?" She turned, startled. He stood a few paces away, his coat brushing the cold air, his notebook under his arm. His face was unreadable, shadowed by the dim light. "I don't know," she admitted softly. "Maybe I don't," he said. "I think some things happen because they're meant to. Even the smallest things. A scratch on a car. A note under a wiper. Two strangers meeting twice when once would have been enough." His words unsettled her. It's not because they frightened her, but because they stirred something inside her that she had long kept buried. She hugged her books tighter against her chest. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think," he said, voice low, "that you're standing at the edge of something you don't yet see." The silence that followed was deeper than any before.